They built this really nice bike lane, but it's in the middle of the street.
We tried something new in San Francisco, which we've never done before.
This is Valencia Street.
The most densely populated neighborhood. 2 miles of businesses. They're all only independent businesses.
And in such a hilly city, it's a flat place to ride your bike.
3,500 cyclists a day use Valencia. That is a lot.
You want to ride your bike on Valencia Street. The shops are colorful. It connects from one end of the Mission to the other.
There's so many things that this street needs to do. It has to take deliveries. It has to be safe for people walking.
So the city took a gamble. Instead of shoving bikes off to the side, what if they pushed the cars out of the way instead? You'd think riding in the middle of the street would be the scariest place to ride, but it's not. You get the barriers here and stuff. It's kind of becoming my favorite kind of bike lane. Which makes it too bad that they're not going to keep it.
So that space between parked vehicles was a free-for-all. You had people trying to drive, you had cyclists trying to get
Paul
through.
Stanis is one of San Francisco MTA's project managers. San Francisco's trying to replace the old bike lanes that used to be here.
Parking and loading lane, bike lane, vehicle travel lane. You had conflict points everywhere. It was a bit of a free-for-all.
I don't like that. The most common kind of bike lane that engineers call Class 2. Turns out the numbers aren't any kind of hierarchy. Bigger doesn't mean better, it's just a category. Parked cars to the right of me, traffic to the left of me. Yeah, that's real fun. Class 2 bike lanes make you feel like a sandwich right before dinner.
I actually have a whole post on how to avoid obstacles in the bike lane.
Dylan Harris knows the Valencia Street Class 2 bike lanes really well.
You're just kind of a bit squished.
Anytime somebody can throw their door open, if I ran into that, they call that dooring because it really hurts.
They painted a second white line just to be really super serious that you shouldn't cross this. And of course, everyone ignored it.
Bike raiders I talked with said it really wasn't too bad. Right in my way. Until rideshare services got big and people started double parking in the bike lane.
So anyone at any time could pull over into the bike lane, open a door, stop and unload.
These scary intrusions happen about every block and inspired Dylan to write a blog post.
Efficiently, like looking behind you and like moving out and around and kind of making this part of your bike commuting knowledge.
A Class 2 bike lane may be just fine for a professional cyclist, but what about dummies like me? Pardon me.
You have parents with kids on the back, you have cargo bikes, e-bikes. We want to provide cycling facilities that cater to everybody.
So in 2019, the city's mayor ordered a flip-flop on 4 blocks of Valencia Street. The bike lane up against the curb on the right-hand side here, parked cars on my left, and those act kind of like a buffer between the traffic and me, so it feels a whole lot safer. And in 2020, they plan to do more.
But then COVID happened and everything changed.
Normally we would do a parking protected bike lane. It would be at the curb, right?
Remember back during the pandemic when we all had to eat outside? To help out businesses, the city of San Francisco had a program where they could build outdoor dining in place of on-street parking. They call this a parklet. And at the height of the pandemic, there were sometimes 4, 5, or more on every single block.
When you have so many parklets on the corridor, how do you manage that?
The parklets sit at the curb, right where the new bike lane needs to go. That got engineers and planners asking, does the bike lane even have to be on the outside? Well, instead of being over here where it's busy and crowded and there are parklets and stuff, why not come over here to the middle of the road where like this area's pretty calm. At the turn lane, there's not a single parklet in the way.
January of 2023, when the MTA presented this plan,
Eileen Rinaldi owns a coffee shop on Valencia Street.
I was supportive of it. I'm a fan of bike infrastructure. I think that it's a good way to get more people to come to the neighborhood.
We really heard from all kinds of different stakeholders, and we decided, based on that feedback, to try something new.
To be honest, when I first heard about this bike lane, I thought it was absolutely bonkers. So on my trip home to LA from Sacramento, I detoured all the way to the Bay Area just to check it out.
That looks like that works pretty good.
But not everybody liked them as well as I did.
From the first 3 months it was instituted, the cyclists hated it. And now if you look at their data, they're like, actually, we kind of like it.
Like as soon as I turned on this bike lane, suddenly all the intensity of biking and city traffic just melted away.
I like the view, you know, you get a really cool vista.
But you can relax and enjoy because the city bans cars from turning left. As long as you have a green light, the path should be wide open. And because you're in the center of the road, the cars turning right are nowhere near you.
It's pretty protected. There's no double parking going on in the bicycle lane. There's no parked cars that could open their doors.
And you notice there's no concrete here, just rubber and plastic materials like these. San Francisco call it a quick build project because they're hoping it's a lot faster to install and could save them a lot of money.
Relatively temporary materials that you can see here, the K79s. Yes, there's some paint on the ground, but we're really talking about paint and rubber so that we can try things out on the ground, and if they don't work, we can adjust it.
And one of the cool features, both the north and southbound bike lanes are running side by side, which makes the bike lane extra wide.
Bringing new bicyclists on it, I can have somebody ride side by side and I can talk to them.
I bike on this bike lane a lot.
Robin Pam advocates for transportation that's safe for kids.
There aren't that many bike lanes in the city where it's possible to ride side by side with your child. If you're riding in this bike lane with your kid, people can go around you.
Just like cars, faster traffic can pass and be on their way.
This thing's like a bike freeway, you just zip along.
They even time the lights to give me lots of greens, just like an expressway.
To 13 miles an hour and is timed to kind of perfectly ride your bike through. They call it the green wave.
One of the compelling arguments I heard, if we want to get more people on bikes, we have to make it that it's faster.
The downside is if I'm making such great time, why would I stop at Eileen's coffee shop or any shop? We'll talk about that in just a second.
I will never stop ever again. Oh, my hat.
I would probably let my 8-year-old bike in it. I have an 8-year-old. It's good once you're in it, but the way the intersections work just make it a difficult design.
Going straight across from center to center, well, that's easy, as long as you don't have to turn. But switching from a side to a center bike lane, well, that took some engineering.
So it's a combination of roadway striping and signal timing. You have bike signals, the walk signal activates. Those are the only two movements that are happening at the intersection.
Where there are almost no crash conflicts center to center, crossing side to center feels a little more precarious. Like you see here, center to center you cross on the green light with the cars, but side to center you definitely do not do that. You cross only on a dedicated green bike light.
Oh, they got my green.
Those lights go off, they turn red, and then
Running the light.
the vehicle phases start.
Woo! It's actually kind of impressive considering, being a quick build project, they didn't have a ton of money to buy new equipment. And the old brains of the intersection here.
Those cabinets are decades old. They are ancient.
So adding in a bike light is not easy. Some people in the neighborhood wanted the city to add left turn arrows, and the equipment can't even do that.
The cabinets are full. We can't add any more phases.
They had to get creative. That bike light, the computer can't handle a bike light. So the technicians for the city got clever and they spliced it onto the walk counter over there. So if you watch it count out here, when it ends, it turns yellow. Because the computer doesn't think that's a bike light, it thinks it's a walk counter. It's a quick build project. You have to get creative to find ways to stretch that tax dollar, I guess. I wish I could just end the video here and say, everybody loved the bike lane. The end. But transportation exists in the context of the city and the neighborhood that surround it. And for some,
All I know is from my perspective as a business owner, this thing sucks, man.
This video is not sponsored by Money, the free browser extension that makes money. Now, maybe not for you, but for somebody.
Predominantly entertaining barware, glassware.
Tony Leo tells me he didn't know anything about the bike lane until it showed up at the front door of his business.
I didn't really have a problem with it initially until I actually looked at numbers and spoke to a number of the merchants.
The merchants group did a survey and most people saw that their business was down after the bike lane.
These folks are having a really tough time, down 40 to 60% in some cases.
The pandemic was not kind to the city of San Francisco or to Valencia Street.
We were just starting to see a recovery from COVID. 2023 was the first year where we had double-digit growth over the prior year. And then we can see when the bike lane was finished, it went down to single-digit growth and then negative.
Eileen Rinaldi tells me 4 of her 5 coffee shops are doing just fine, except for the flagship store on Valencia Street.
I attribute some of our lack of foot traffic right now to the bike lane, but it's not the bike lane itself.
The culprit, she says, are the rubber barriers, which keep cars out of the bike lane, but also stop cars from being able to pass one another.
It's not about the bike lane taking up space. To me, it's about that constriction of the flow of traffic.
imagine for a moment I'm driving my car and I want to parallel park into that space. So I stop, I put on my reverse lights, I start backing up and trying to reteach myself how to parallel park. And while I'm doing all of that, traffic backs up behind me. And they can't go around me because those barriers for the bikeway are in the way.
I've seen fender benders where both cars then have to park and get out and exchange information, and that creates a delay of several blocks because there's nowhere to get out of the way.
For Tony, it's a parking issue.
If anybody's trying to pick anything up, nobody can pass one another. Double parking to get things done is impossible.
Even with pushing the bike lanes to the middle of the street, the total number of spaces dropped 20%.
If you're working for one of those food delivery apps like Grubhub or Dine and Dash or whatever, these loading zones are worth their weight in gold. Unless there's already somebody parked here, you can't exactly double park and throw your hazards on and park here like you used to be able to because, well, there's that barrier.
I see it at least once a day, somebody doing a U-turn over the things.
People that get frustrated and then they just blow through. I see people running over the rubber, through the cones. I mean, these things are destroyed.
It makes a really interesting catch-22 because we put both directions of the bike lanes together. People were able to ride side by side or pass each other, but that meant we separated the two directions of the car lanes, which means now they can't. We can put the car lanes back together, but that means separating the bike lanes. Either way, we got to pick a side.
And the double wide bike lane itself can be a mixed blessing. For starters, it's now the widest lane in the street, so that's where all the emergency vehicles drive.
So the times where I've been in the bike lane and a fire truck is coming, it's really scary.
If vehicle enters the center running lane,
Which I saw happen.
it's very unnerving. A few instances, sometimes it's people on dirt bikes or four-wheelers.
But the merchants aren't having problems with people misusing the lane. It's people who use the lane a bit too well.
I've gone 6-7 blocks, and all I've had to think about is just making sure I make the green light.
I haven't even been thinking about the businesses I'm passing.
I mean, you see something, you want to be able to stop. You want to be able to engage with the corridor, and frankly, you can't.
And Tony tells me he doesn't expect the bike lane to go away.
A lot of people are talking about this. Put the bike lane on another street.
You take a look at the street grid. Well, some of these streets are made for buses, some are made for cars, some of them don't go through, and of all of them, Valencia is the flattest.
But the fact is that everybody's still going to ride their bikes on Valencia.
When the bike lane first went in, crashes actually went up a little bit. But after a year or so, as people have gotten used to it, crashes have been coming down. But data for the sake of data is just a little too cold for Tony.
They can look at the numbers of accidents and say that center running bike lane is a success by some metric, but they're not a business.
Okay, so for a thought exercise, I asked Tony, you're running the MTA now, so what do you do?
Frankly, take it back to the way that it was, like a narrow bike lane, take out the center running bike lane, and just have more room on the streets and more parking for people.
The trouble is 100% parking is probably gone for good. One, because SFMTA are not going to bring back the dangerous Class 2 sandwich bike lanes. And two, a new state law for 2025 doesn't allow anyone to park within one car length of a crosswalk, which includes the corner. But this is good because cars and pedestrians can finally see each other. But it costs us 4 parking spaces. Engineers call this daylighting.
Cyclists say the lanes are dangerous, and local merchants say the change has just been killing their business.
So with the 1-year trial period coming to an end, what does San Francisco's MTA do?
San Francisco, I think, is known for its robust public outreach process, and I think we doubled down on that when we heard that it wasn't working.
So after talking to pretty much everybody in the neighborhood again, they decided to go back to that original pre-pandemic plan of putting the bike lane here against the curb.
Only problem, the new side running design drops the number of parking spaces another 20%. That's thanks to daylighting and
If you have a parklet that's up against the curb, and then I have to build my bike lane around you, I need transition space, right?
As that side bike lane rolls up to the parklet, well, it's not going to suddenly just dart over, right? It's going to smoothly transition kind of diagonally around it. And to make that curve, it wipes out 2 parking spaces on this side of the parklet and another 2 on the other side. 4 parking spaces that are gone that people can't go to the business anymore.
We said, hey, if you want to stay at the curb, you're welcome to do that. But if you'd like to try a floating configuration, which means you take your parklet and you build it in the parking lane, that is going to give you more parking on your block.
So if the bike lane can stay along the curb and go around the parklet on this side, well, you no longer have that transition. So that's 2 parking spaces you have here because people can just pull their cars right up to the parklet. It does mean while you're dining that you got cars zooming around you on the left and bikes zooming around you on the right.
So there's going to be a ramp going up to allow for people to cross from the parklet safely to the sidewalk.
That'll slow the bicycles down so they're not going 40 miles an hour past your lunch.
Making a nice flush entry between the parklet and the curb.
That keeps it compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act, so wheelchairs can get in there. Kids won't trip and drop their salad walking in there. What kind of kid eats salad?
All of this, the bike safety, the parking, the loading zones, parklets, and dozens of other things, all come together in a plan that maybe nobody loves, but hopefully everybody can live with. And after all that, it goes to the board.
Approving a side-running protected bikeway.
Which means public comment.
The center bike lane on Valencia Street makes biking my most frequent choice.
It feels safer to me as a cyclist.
I now believe it's one of the best places to bike in the city.
It's been very detrimental to our business.
It's a mess. Everybody's really upset.
Most merchants will tell you they want it to go back to the way it was.
By the way, I can't stand bicycles, but I love my bicycle friends. Yeah, I don't like them. I used to be a motorcycle rider.
Henderson.
And November 2024, the board voted to push the bike lanes out of the center and over to the curb.
Thank you. That item is approved.
I would have loved for them to keep this in the ground for another year maybe to kind of see how things evolve and change.
Dylan was far from alone trying to save the center running bike lane. He even had a guerrilla ad campaign. It didn't work.
And I think that's the big key, is familiarity. This is something that San Franciscans know. They've seen this kind of bike lane in other parts of the city.
There's definitely been a lot of vitriol over it, but I do think that the merchants on Valencia have taken a really constructive approach to working with the city and trying to really find real solutions.
I appreciated that the SFMTA did a bold thing here.
It's been a painful process, I'll be honest with you. In the end, we are flexible and we're trying to make adjustments based on the feedback that we've heard.
We tried it out. We learned a lot. Valencia may not be the best fit, but maybe it has a place in San Francisco down the road.
So Paul tells me that he and the former project manager, Kimberly Leung, and their team collected tons of data on this project. They have a couple of reports coming out throughout 2025. And he says other cities are really curious about how this all turned out and what they found out about it. They've been calling his phone saying, hey, can we get a sneak peek at that data? So if you think it's complicated trying to get a bike lane put in your city and try to make everybody happy, well, now you know a little bit of the story of what it takes to try to keep 800,000 people happy. I'll see you next time.
And if that's just one bike lane on one street, imagine what it's like trying to deal with this across an entire city. Subscribing helps you find the next video. Supporting helps pay for the next video so I can go cover the next thing in transportation.